Welcome to the Real Estate 401k Show. Here are your hosts, Ryan Gerdes, Mike Weinstein, and Justin Frederick, helping you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Powered by the Real Estate 401k Group at West USA and the Frederick Team with Fairway Mortgage and MLS number 625918.
Well, welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. Your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Ryan Gerdes. Ryan, you're nearly 60 days into this 60-day hardish type thing, 60 days, no alcohol.
Yeah.
How you doing? Because we've all been trying to stay as far away from you as possible.
Right. It's like when I wake up, I'm all good. Just don't talk to me after 7 o'clock. Like that's when all motivation is lost, and that's when that's when the gremlin comes out.
and it's not even so much about staying away from you because you might be a little bit grumpy. You're just not fun. Like, I miss my old buddy, and I can't wait for him to return.
I'm fun. Just ask me.
All right, one of the things, as you know, we talk about this all the time with our investors, and not only investors, but home buyers. It's so important to remove as much of emotion from the decision-making process as possible, because the focus needs to be on the numbers. The focus always needs to be on the return, and oftentimes emotion clouds that. And so I found this interesting study. It is the 5 most dangerous neighborhoods in Phoenix. And as you know, Phoenix is just huge, and we're growing. And I want to pose the question. I'm going to go through the list here real quick, but I want to pose the question is, how much does crime rate or a study like this impact, scare you, influence your decision when we're really focused on real estate and really focused on making wealth in real estate? And I know this stat is a little bit old. 2019, Phoenix said that their violent crime rate was 678 per 1,000 residents.
100,000 residents.
Per 100, yeah. That
would be a ridiculous crime rate.
I wouldn't even drive there. 678 per 100,000 residents. But that is almost twice the national average. So I can't imagine that over the last several years that has changed much. But here are the 5 most dangerous neighborhoods in Phoenix. If you know, you know. Maryville, South Mountain, which was a little bit of a surprise for me. Also, Encanto was a little bit of a surprise for me, but Alhambra was not a surprise, and definitely Central City, which is really funny, is neither one of us had heard of it.
Where the hell is Central City? I had to look it up.
And then when you look at the cross streets, you're like, oh, yeah.
I know that.
What does this do for you? What does this mean to you as an investor? Are there opportunities in neighborhoods like this, or you just run for the hills?
I've found some of my best investments in some quote unquote high crime areas, and it really kind of depends on what your model. You hear us talk all the time about creating an investment model, sticking to it, and then if it checks all the boxes, jump at it. If it doesn't, run away from it. So, let's take Maryville, for example. I think that this is a fantastic opportunity for a lot of buy holds. That's a really working class neighborhood, and we've seen a lot of really solid people come in there and rent for 4, 5, 6 years before they turn over. And as an investor, that's just music to my ears. So if you have a investment model that includes long-term rentals and buying and holding, some of the issues in there is that it is an older neighborhood. That's John F. Long territory back in the 60s, who's kind of pioneered the whole track home concept here in the greater Phoenix area back then. I think that they actually finally bulldozed his home, that one over there just west of the 101.
Well, you did introduce me to some incredible Mexican food over there the other day. That was the original Garcia's.
Yeah.
That was special.
That place is money.
Because you could also find great food in places like this, in these neighborhoods like these.
These are older neighborhoods where there's generations of Phoenicians here that have kind of forged that neighborhood. Unfortunately, there has been some crime that has come in there that kind of really introduced itself in the in the 80s and then didn't get a whole lot better. So unfortunately, we are dealing with that. Grand Avenue, which is parallel to the train tracks, that I think in any city, trains kind of bring along a little bit of that stigma. And so, I mean, because you have these big, huge industrial warehouses and yards and places that are essentially vacant for long periods of time, areas for people to get into trouble in.
Well, here's a fun fact, and I know you know this, but this is just for the benefit of our listeners. One thing that a lot of people don't realize about Maricopa County, the Phoenix metropolitan area, you cannot take a passenger train here. Amtrak and the likes do not have a station in Phoenix.
Not
You have to
anymore.
go down to Tucson, I think it is, or up to Flagstaff.
Maricopa has one.
Okay.
And I don't know anyone who's taken it. I know that I've looked it up because, like back east, take the
Train
take
everywhere.
the train everywhere, or in Europe, you take the train everywhere. And so, of course, I'm always looking, hey, what's going on? And apparently there's a station in Maricopa. They are talking about starting a line going from here to LA and then also one from here to Vegas. That would be badass, dude.
That would be badass. I hate that drive. I hate that drive to
Yeah,
Vegas.
that would take away so many problems and issues because we go there all the time, right? And you know what? Quite frankly, shocker, Maryvale isn't too far away from your boys' old stomping grounds. It's kind of where I grew up, just a little bit north of that. And while there was high crime, there's a lot of community. There's a lot of people that just did come together, and there's and it's just it sucks because it's a lot of the bad apples that kind of made it that way.
All right, if you are looking for where some of the best opportunities are when it comes down to investing in real estate in the Phoenix metropolitan area, I'd say the entire state of Arizona, go ahead and text the word crime to 623-AZ-RECON. That's crime to 623-AZ-RECON. I'd love to sit down with you and just kind of help you see opportunities like we see opportunities. I think also the other big important question that you have to take into consideration with this, Ryan, is the type of crimes. Because when I started this episode, this was the violent crime rate. Violent crime rate is different from breaking and entering and, in other types of crimes. And so and we don't have a breakdown of, what types of crimes in different areas.
I don't think we have enough time.
No, but so when I take a look at Maryville, I'm not, I would think that would be a different type of, as far as the percentage of crime, different type of crime than maybe in, is what we like to call now, Central City. One of my favorite stories about Central City, I was invested in a fourplex down there off Roosevelt. It was a rough area, but you know what? They paid their rent, and the rent just kept coming. But I remember this one day I went to go collect rent, and because we didn't have Zelle and Venmo back then, it was
You had to go knock on the door.
I had to go knock on the door, and one of my tenants spray painted on her door, and it said, "No money, no honey." So I understood why she paid cash.
Yeah, well, she was busy, I'm sure.
But I think too, it's I like to pay attention. Like, to me, stories like this scare people, and a typical person would run from these types of neighborhoods because of a story like this and a stat like this. The more people that run, I think it offers the better opportunity for the investor, because there's a lot more negotiation, because people are still living here,
Right.
and people are still renting here.
Well, and let's even get away from the rental model. We talk about Encanto is listed on here, and Encanto is an enchanting neighborhood of historic homes. I mean, there's a lot of architecture, and it's kind of the old Phoenix, and I mean, I've seen some people go in there, take this 1,000-square-foot house, completely remodel it, turn around and sell it for $500,000-600,000. I mean, there's a diverse amount of property in there, and historically, that type of diversity has shown us massive yields because you have something for everybody, right? So you have homes that are like mansions, and then you have some that are very introductory style that are 2-bedroom, small family, or maybe a retirement couple or something like that. But you have these like little pockets in there because you are so close to downtown, and because there's so much traffic and so on and so forth that kind of bring that in there. But otherwise, like for Encanto, I see that as fantastic flip opportunities. So if you have a model that is, hey, we want to get our money in and get our money out as soon as possible, there's a ton of opportunity there. But
would you throw South Mountain into that? I would throw South Mountain into that category as opportunities. I think there's some flip opportunities down there.
I think that there is a lot of South Mountain there's been. Okay, I'm going to stick with Encanto for just a second. There's been a lot of gentrification over there, and so when you talk about that, you kind of need to follow where those government bonds are going, because they've put together millions of dollars for the commercial over there in order to help people, move in there and feel safer. And then we go over to South Mountain. There's similar situation where they've brought in what's called a super fund, and that was back in the early '90s, I believe, in parts of the South Mountain area. Where it was a lot of either really rundown homes and then farmland, right? And then you had a couple of nice little pocket communities right there along the mountain itself, because you just had fantastic views. So that drove in, a higher end crowd over there. But once they started bringing in a lot of different tract homes for an additional infrastructure, then all of a sudden, South Mountain started to do amazing. So that being said, with South Mountain, if you took one of those older homes, depending on which one it was, because there's some really dilapidated properties that are just condemned. You got to bulldoze those sons of bitches.
But if you can get it for the right price.
Right, yeah. But then there's a lot of new products in there that could be good long-term holds. And then some of those are even kind of getting to the point where, yeah, you could do a flip on those. And in addition to that, you have the South Mountain Resort over there, and that does bring in a lot of tourism. So there's some opportunity to do some short-term rental in there, but you just kind of gotta make sure that you're picking the right spots.
You just can't take a city and say yay or nay, or a section, because there are, as you said, there's pockets everywhere. And if you would like some more information on where we think some of the better opportunities are, and I say that with a caveat, it depends on what your investment model looks like, because your investment model will determine what area might offer a better opportunity for you. But we'd love to have that conversation with you, because we were discussing the 5 most dangerous neighborhoods to live in Phoenix. Doesn't say to invest in, says to live in. Go ahead and text the word crime to 623-AZ-RECON. I regret, because he passed away recently, no longer with us, I regret not introducing you to my mentor that I had in the mid-2000s, the gentleman who really kind of turned me into focusing on investments and working with investors and things like that. I remember when I started, meeting with him, and he took me underneath his wing, and he was really focused on multifamily. That's all he did. He had an operation out of Orange County. It's all they did. And he said, all right, he says, we're going to start with our first one. He said, I need you to tell me, what is the worst neighborhood in the Phoenix area as far as crime and condition? He goes, that's where we're buying our first one. And it hit me hard, because he got it, because that was where who in the right mind would invest in there?
Probably slapped you in the face against all your wiring that you've been taught, right? Because, what do they teach you? The first 3 rules about real estate, right? Location, location, location. And in some respects, it's best to be in the best neighborhood. And in other respects, it's best to capitalize on the more challenging neighborhoods. Didn't mean to cut you off. But
No, that was it. I'm just like, I think one of the worst things that you can say from an investment perspective, I only want to invest in a nice area, because you are really limiting your opportunities, because at the end of the day, again, we're removing emotion and we're focused on making money.
I do like having the nicer neighborhoods as the end game, right? I do think, especially for novice investors, or even big box investors who need to have a more diverse portfolio, and And they like the ones that they can move fast, because those ones that are a little bit lower income or lower price, they're easier to move, right? And then we look at conforming loan limits. We look at all these other different factors that allow us to either get minimal money in or best interest rates or whatever the case may be. But as you level up, right, then you know a little bit more. But when you're in some of these other neighborhoods, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake or two here and there. I mean, it does,
Sure.
but you have a little bit more leniency because they have a little bit more of a sense of humor, right?
All right. This is the Real Estate 401k show. We'd love to have a conversation with you about your not only your investment strategies, but your investment portfolio, and help you identify what are some of the better opportunities for investment purposes here in the Phoenix area. All you have to do is text the word crime to 623-AZ-RECON. That's crime to 623-AZ-RECON.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate 401k show. If you want more information on how to build wealth, click on the link or text us at 623-297-3266. That's 623-AZ-RECON.